year, I started to befriend a kid named Matt. Matt was struggling with a lot of things in his life. He had a lot of baggage from his parents and different relationships he had. And he really needed a few friends to not only be there for him, but also help influence him into healthier ways of thinking and teach him better how to interact with others and how more to trust on God. I saw Matt as a friend, as someone who needed a friend and sought to be someone he could begin to trust, so that I could help him become the better person that I could envision him becoming. However, one of my roommates did not think that me talking to Matt was a good idea. He told me that Matt was a bad person and me befriending him would lead me down the wrong path. This roommate thought that I should not even talk to Matt because even talking to a person like that would have a negative influence on me. Now, while there is truth in the idea that you will become like the people you surround yourself with, and that if you want to grow as a Christian, you need to surround yourself with support groups of like-minded believers who are also themselves seeking to grow in Christ, this well-meaning roommate of mine took a good principle too far, because while we as Christians should be careful about who we allow to influence the way we are growing in Christ, we should also be reaching out to others to influence them towards Christ. How can we effectively preach the gospel, for instance, if we are never willing to do more than talk to a sinner for more than 5 minutes? Most real conversions are not a result of a 5-minute talk with a stranger, but rather because of the loving friendship and kinship that they have been shown by believers who, through becoming more like Christ, have drawn them to Him. Today we are going to look at the example of Jesus Christ and how He was always reaching out to the sinner, the poor, the downtrodden, in order to preach to them a more excellent way, to lead them towards Himself and the salvation that He offered. He did not shun the sinner. He did not wall Himself up and hide from those people, but instead reached out to them and ministered to the needs of their heart. In fact, Jesus spent more time ministering to the sinner than He did to the religious leaders. He gave them very little thought, in actuality. So we're going to go to Luke 5:27 through 32. The sister passages for this are also Matthew 9 through 13, and Mark 2:13 through 17. But Luke includes the most detail, so I chose it. It starts out, and after these things he went forth, this is Jesus, and saw a publican named Levi sitting at the seat of custom, and he said unto him, Follow me. And he left all, rose up, and followed him. And Levi made a great feast in his own house, and there was a great company of publicans, and of others that sat down with them. But their scribes and Pharisees murmured against his disciples, saying, Why do you eat and drink with publicans and sinners? And Jesus answering said unto them, They that are whole need not a physician, but they that are sick. I came not to call the righteous, but sinners to repentance. So I have the first part of this message entitled, A Doctor Tends to the Sick. A doctor tends to the sick. Now the context of this passage is that Jesus was gathering His 12 apostles. We often tell this story in Sunday school to the kids. We talk about Him calling out to James and John and Peter and Philip. Well, Levi, also known as Matthew, was also one of the ones that He called to be His apostle. He was one of the 12, and Levi was a tax collector. He collected customs. And so as he was gathering them, he saw Levi sitting at the tax collector's table and told him, Follow me. And so Levi did so. He got up and he began to follow Jesus. The fact that Jesus gathered His apostles not from the religious institutions, the temple, or the legalistic teachers of the day should tell us something right off the bat. Who did Jesus choose to be His apostles? He chose fishermen. He chose a tax collector. He even chose a zealot named Simon. That's a rebel. He chose not the well-learned, not the well-educated, not the top religious scholars of his day. He chose regular people. He picked regular guys, not scholars. And so Matthew, or Levi, however you want to name him, then held a great feast at his house. And Jesus was at that feast. Now, if Matthew was a publican, what do you think most of his colleagues and friends are? Probably publicans, right? And it says that there were many publicans and sinners who came to this feast. And and his disciples, his apostles, were eating at this feast, and these were most likely many of Matthew's friends and colleagues and co-workers, people that he knew, and they came to this feast. Now, why do you think he threw this big feast? He wanted them to meet Jesus. And so he threw a big feast so that they would come and meet Jesus. And they were probably curious as to why Matthew would choose to leave his table and follow this guy. They wanted, well, who's this guy Matthew's following? And so they came to the feast out of curiosity because they wanted to find out what exactly was going on. Well, this created a bit of a scandal among certain people. It says, the Sadducees and the Pharisees, they were scandalized by the fact that Jesus was eating with those sinners and those publicans. How dare he? I thought he was supposed to be a religious teacher. How can a man that's supposed to be a religious teacher be eating with those people? He should be staying as far away from them as possible, because that's how good, righteous people behave. That's the way they were acting. That's what they were thinking. They would have never thought of demeaning themselves or corrupting their righteous life by going and eating at that feast. So what did Jesus respond? How did Jesus respond to this accusation, this scandal that he was courting with those sinners and publicans? Well, he said, they that are whole need not a physician. When do we usually call the doctor? Do we call the doctor after we've had a really good week and ask for a visit? We go, doctor, I really need to come in because I have been the healthiest I've ever been in my entire life. I felt so good. I've been so energetic. I really need to come in for a doctor's appointment. Is that what we do? No. In fact, if we're feeling really healthy, we don't want to go see the doctor. We aren't even tempted to want to go see the doctor. When do we want to go see the doctor? We ain't feeling that good. When something is wrong, then we say, I better call that doctor. As much as I don't like going to him, I better call him and figure out what's going on. We don't go see the doctor when we're well. We go see him when we're sick. So we go to that doctor, we go to the hospital when we know something is wrong with our physical health. We want to get better, to be healed. And so we go to the person that we know is the most likely be the person that is most likely able to help us with our problems. So if our problems are our physical health, we're going to go to a doctor, we're going to go to the hospital, we're going to go to someone who practices medicine. Now if our car breaks down, we're not going to call our doctor. We're going to call our mechanic. And when our health gets bad, we're not going to call the mechanic, we're going to call the doctor. Because that's what they have trained to deal with. But you know what? If I don't know something's wrong with me, if I don't know that I'm physically ill, am I going to call the doctor? No, I'm not. Because, you know what? Sometimes we think we're healthy. We think we're in really good condition. We think everything's okay. But there's something going on. We're getting sick and we don't even know it. But we're not going to call the doctor until we realize something is wrong. And so when Jesus said, they that are whole need not a physician, and then he says, I came not to call the righteous, but sinners to repentance. Jesus is not saying that the Pharisees and the Sadducees were righteous. He's not saying that they didn't need help. But what he is saying is they don't recognize the fact that they need help. And since they aren't even willing to acknowledge that they're sinners, he can't help them until they come to that point. In another passage, when Jesus heals the blind man, the Pharisees get upset because he said that he has come to heal, because they think he called him blind. And he basically told them, well, he basically said, because you can't see your sin, I can't help you. Once you see your sin, once you're no longer blind and you can see your sin, then I can make you whole, but I can't help you if you're blind to your sin. And that's exactly what he's telling these Pharisees here, is that because you are so self-righteous, because you believe that you have found righteousness according to the law, I can't do seek Jesus Christ if we think we're righteous on our own. Only the person who knows they are a sinner, only the person who understands the depravity of their own heart, is one who can seek after Christ. And so Jesus focused his ministry, therefore, on those that would be able to hear and respond to his message. The Pharisees, those religious, self-righteous people who believed that they could attain righteousness through their adherence to the law, were not able to hear the message that Christ proclaimed, because they believed they already had the answer. They already had the righteousness that they sought. They were unable to hear the real answer when it was preached. So Jesus focused on those that knew they were sinners, those who knew and admitted they had a problem, who understood they couldn't be righteous in and of themselves because they could be taught the truth. They knew they were broken, and thus Jesus was able to fix them. There's so many things you can think of. I think of the Pharisee and the publican, the story that Jesus tells of the Pharisee and the publican praying in the temple. But today, I want to go ahead and turn over to Luke 7. We're going to look at 36 through 50. We're going to look at the story of the woman who washed Jesus' feet, anointed Jesus' feet with oil, and washed his feet with her tears and her hair. And this is another similar concept that we see once again, the outrage of the Pharisees that Jesus would dare let a sinner touch him. It says, and one of the Pharisees desired him, this is Jesus, that he would eat with him. And he went into the Pharisee's house and sat down to eat. And behold, a woman in the city, which was a sinner, when she knew that Jesus sat in the Pharisee's house, brought an alabaster box of ointment, and stood at his feet behind him weeping, and began to wash his feet with tears, and did wipe them with the hairs of her head, and kissed his feet, and anointed them with the ointment. Now when the Pharisees which had bidden him saw it, he spake within himself, saying, This man, if he were a prophet, would have known who and what manner of woman that is that toucheth him, for she is a sinner. And Jesus answered and said unto him, Simon, I have somewhat to say unto thee. And he said, Master, say on. There was a certain creditor which had two debtors. The one owed 500 pence and the other 50. And when they had nothing to pay, he frankly forgave them both. Tell me therefore, which of them will love him most? Simon answered and said, Well, I suppose that he to whom he forgave most. And he said unto him, Thou hast judged right, thou hast rightly judged. And he turned to the woman and said unto Simon, Seest thou this woman? I entered into thine house. Thou gavest me no water for my feet, but she hath washed my feet with tears, and wiped them with the hairs of her head. Thou gavest me no kiss, but this woman, since the time I came in, hath not ceased to kiss my feet. My head with oil thou didst not anoint, but this woman hath anointed my feet with ointment. Wherefore I say unto thee, her sins, which are many, are forgiven. For she loved much, but to whom little is forgiven, the same loveth little. And he said unto her, Thy sins are forgiven. And they that sat at meat with him began to say within themselves, Who is this that forgiveth sins also? And he said to the woman, Thy faith hath saved thee. Go in peace. Now this is not the same exact incident, occurrence that we see in many of the other Gospels where Mary breaks a pricely box of oil over Jesus before he died. This is much earlier than that, so it's a different story. And Simon is sitting there. Simon's the name of this Pharisee who invited Jesus over for supper to eat with him. And as this woman is washing Jesus' feet with his hair, as she's pouring this oil on him, he's thinking within his heart, if Jesus was really a prophet, he would know who this woman was. And see, he was kind of right there, because Jesus did know who the woman was. But see, when Simon was thinking that, he had a thought there. See, there's something implied in that thought. Was that if he really knew who that woman was, he wouldn't let her touch him. He wouldn't let her anywhere near him because she's a sinner. And if he was really a holy prophet, he wouldn't have anything to do with it. That was what Simon was thinking. That was the implication patient in his thought. And he definitely wouldn't be allowing her to anoint his feet with oil and wipe them with her tears and hair. So the fact that this woman was a sinner was enough in the eyes of Simon to mean that no one should ever, no good person, no holy person, no righteous person would ever talk to her or even let them touch her because they might be contaminated by her. And they should avoid her at all costs. That's the mindset that he had when he taught those words. And you can see that in the way Jesus responds. His first response in verse 40 to 42 is he asks Simon a question. He says, Simon, I've got a question for you. And he gives him a little story. He tells a story about two men. One man had a debt of 50 pence and another man had a debt of 250. And the debtor forgave both. And he asked, well, which one of them do you think is going to love him more? Well, and it says Simon, I kind of get the idea that Simon kind of guessed. Well, the one who was forgiven most. Jesus says, you're right. And now we see Jesus give him a slight rebuke here. He says, you know, when I came here, you invited me to your house for this meal. But you didn't give me any water to wash my feet. You didn't kiss me. And that sounds weird to us. That sounds really weird to us. But in the culture of this time, it was common for men to greet each other with a kiss. That's why Paul, in another passage, tells his brethren to greet one another with a holy kiss. It meant something very different in that culture and time than what we understand today. And actually, in many Middle Eastern cultures, they still do those things. Men still kiss each other on the cheeks in the form of welcome. You can see it in some Italian things. And so that's what he's saying. You didn't welcome me with a kiss, but she hasn't ceased from kissing me since I came in this door. You did not anoint my head, but she has been anointing my feet. And so he said, Simon, you invited me here, but you didn't welcome me like she has. You didn't show your affection like she has. You didn't show her devotion. You didn't show your devotion like she has. Because she has been forgiven much. Now the truth is, let me ask you, is she more of a sinner than Simon was? No. We're all sinners in the eyes of God. We're all equal in the eyes of God. We're all equally wretched sinners. But see, she had something that Simon did. She understood the depravity of her heart. He didn't. He was still dependent upon his self-righteousness, where she knew she had nothing. So she knew that Jesus Christ would save her from her sin, whereas Simon didn't really think he needed. Jesus was not, and so then Jesus told them, he says, her sins, which are many, are forgiven, for she hath loved much. To whom little is forgiven, the same loveth little. And Jesus was not making a judgment on the amount of sin Simon or the other self-righteous had committed, nor saying that they had little need of forgiveness. Rather, he was pointing out that since they did not believe they needed that forgiveness, they did not recognize the depravity of their own hearts, they had little love for him, and could not receive the gift of forgiveness this woman sought, for they did not seek it themselves. They did not even realize they needed it. And he tells her, thy faith has saved thee, go in peace. Because she knew she was a sinner. She sought out the Savior, one who could cleanse her of her guilt. And so her faith that Christ could redeem her, could make her whole, did indeed make her whole. You know, Jesus did not avoid the sinners. He did not avoid the world. He did not hide from them. He did not refuse to associate with them. Rather, Jesus sought them out so that he could minister to them. He showed them love. He showed them grace. He sought to heal their injuries and comfort their grief. Jesus did not seek to force the world to live to his standards, but rather came to give them a new way, a different solution for the sins that beset them. Jesus' ministry here on earth was focused on those sinners. It was focused on, number one, teaching the apostles so that they could spread the gospel, but also it was focused on those who needed him. The person who knew and understood that they were not righteous, who did not hide behind the veneer of self-righteous hypocrisy, believing themselves to be better than everyone else, but instead were open and honest with who they were. You know, when I lived in Florida, that's the Bible Belt. You couldn't throw a rock without hitting 3 churches in Pensacola. I'm not kidding you. There was churches everywhere. The church I attended shared a back fence with another like-minded, independent, fundamental Baptist church. They were everywhere. But when you would talk to people, everyone was saved. Everyone was a Christian. But the truth is, I'm pretty sure most of them weren't. You know what? It was pretty hard to witness to them. Because they already trusted in their religiosity. They already had their ideas. You know who's easier to witness to? People who know they're not saved. People who are open about the fact that they aren't a Christian, and maybe even the fact that they don't believe. Because at least they're being honest about what's in their heart. They might need to learn that those things are wrong, but they're more honest, and so it's easier to deal with them. Jesus knew that he could not save a man who did not see himself in need of a Savior. So Jesus went to the people who knew they were sinners because they had at least taken the first step to solving their problem, acknowledging that it existed. We are not called to cloister ourselves in a fortress protected from the world, waiting for Jesus to come back. We are called to go out into the world, preaching and teaching the gospel to everyone, to those sinners, showing them the love of Christ, reaching out to them in their time of heartache and need. We are called to bring them to the great physician, Jesus Christ. While well-meaning, my college roommate was wrong. We shouldn't avoid sinners. We shouldn't avoid those people so they don't contaminate us. We should instead bathe so much in the Word of God, prayer, and fellowship that when we go out and befriend those in the world, when we try to reach them, when we try to help them, it is us that will rub off on them and not the other way around. Our witness ought to be so strong that it cannot help but draw them to Christ, the one who can help them. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for your word. I pray that you help each of us to be a witness in this world, not be afraid to show your love and mercy and grace to everyone out there, no matter how sinful they look on the outside, no matter how despicable we think they may be. Pray that you help us to show them your love. We love you. We thank you for everything you've done. In your son's name. Amen.
Amen. Amen, boys and girls.